becoming rather confusing. Just call him Joe. Like I call it is short for Yusuf. His professional training at Harvard University was in paleontology, science of fossils. And in the world of art, it deals with what he calls fossil art. When he was heading the National Library in Cairo, he became interested in this field. When he got involved with old Arabic manuscripts, and since he's coming to Oman last 5 years, a bit more, from Egypt, from being the Undersecretary for Culture, he has devoted all his time, heart, and soul to a phase of human culture that strikes deep into history. Another means the folklore of Oman. Now this is where I'll leave Dr. Yusuf Chowdhury, our Joe, to take over and lead you on a guided tour into beautiful Oman. Before the end of this tour, he mentioned to me that he has a little surprise for each one of you. I will not say what that is, of course. I will let Dr. Chowdhury surprise me.
Live in that. Is this functioning? I doubt it. Well, do you in the back rows hear me clearly? Yeah. Well, how about that? All right. As I just said a minute ago, folklore does not live in vacuum. It does not live with people, it lives inside of the people. They create it. So, if we venture to talk about the folklore of any country, one will have to understand not only the people of that country, but their ecology, their surroundings, their history, their making, in order that this folklore should have any meaning and make any sense. Folklore is beautiful because of its spontaneity. And if we think of folklore as a feature of the past, we would be very unjust to folklore, to the people who create it, and to ourselves. Folklore is a perpetuating phenomenon. We don't know when it started, and there is no prospect of it stopping being folklore as long as there are people creating what they feel like creating without even stopping to think about it. But the major feature of folklore is it's being a mirror reflecting the beauty of every single element that enters into its making. Talking specifically about the folklore of Oman, I found that the beauty that I see around in this country is dazzling. And talking about beauty in the aesthetic sense, makes me think twice before I leave the word beauty itself to its manifestation. When the word beauty is mentioned, the first thought goes to the beauty of a face, a figure, a voice, a color. Well, men and women may enjoy the beauty, the facial beauty, or the beauty of a very well-formed body, man. But the most interesting phase of beauty is the intellectual beauty of the individual. Those who can, or those who are endowed with external and internal beauty, do reflect the essence of true beauty, which again is in the making of folklore. Let's take modern Oman. The Oman we are living in, not only today but at this moment. Let's look around. We will see so many elements in present day Oman that strike deep in time, although it has taken a contemporary form. I'm going to take you onto a guided tour through some pictures here. I brought with me some slides, and I chose to start from a place where most of us, if not all of us, have been. But this requires one to stop for a moment and think. Is the Intercontinental Hotel really beautiful? It looks so solid from the outside. It has no color. And yet, when you think of the thought that underlies its architectural structure, you'll be surprised. The Intercontinental Hotel is the modern manifestation of the old Omani house. A square yard, an empty square yard in the middle, with a row of rooms all around it. Probably the biggest room is for the sheikh of the tribe, and opposite to it is the majlis where he receives his guests, and the small niches all around are for the members of the family, single or married, with or without children. The fact that the Intercontinental Hotel is in 6 stories does not alter the fact that this is the old Omani house. But when you look at the Intercontinental Hotel, looking for beauty, the view of the sea from in front of the Intercontinental Hotel, not into the Intercontinental Hotel. Now, you see the expanse in the middle, and the rows of the rooms, or the rows of rooms all around it. Well, never mind the elevator in the middle, but you see the expanse that expresses the beauty of the Omani home, if seen in perspective. Stories, I think it's the third floor, and again into Salala. Now, those pictures, that old architecture, if properly done and properly seen and aesthetically photographed, can speak up for intrinsic beauty that has absolutely no chance of being challenged, and, as they say, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So, if we look around and try to connect things, an overflowing river of beauty across time and space. If we go to Salalah, this is in Al-Mirsiyah. The Valley of the Birds has a reason. These birds are not just dancing like so, for nothing. What does not show in this picture is a mat of small fish that had been taken out of the sea, probably the same day, and spread on the shore to dry. They are going to use this for animal feed, but before it goes to become animal feed, it becomes, shall we say, a temptation for these birds to perform this ballet. This is a scene that you can see every day. But has anybody stopped to think of these birds actually as making an avian ballet? They do. How many times has anybody stopped to look at sunset and enjoy it? From the top of the Oman Center for Traditional Music, we have a very nice overview of the sea. This is not a picture of the Muscat sunset. It is a picture of the Salalah sunset. Now, sunset in Oman is full of music. And it has been a topic which has been touched so many times in folk poetry, vernacular poetry. It is very difficult to translate vernacular poetry into another language, otherwise it would lose its beauty and its aesthetic value. And yet, a picture of this sort here in Oman speaks of beautiful Oman at sunset, whether it is in Salalah, in Musandam, in Muscat, or anywhere, because the sun does set. This is the way Ain Azat looks from across the wire fence. When I went there to take some photographs, it was on a day when the park was not open, but I wasn't discouraged. I took some pictures from outside, and here is how it looks. Look at this green patch that almost everybody dreams of having in his own garden or in his own lawn. I am portraying these pictures to you because these are going to have their impact on the folklore of Oman. They are not irrelevant. They are quite relevant. They are the sources from which the people of Oman have drawn when they made the folk. And you see the water course in the middle of the pebble, of the very small pebbles in the bottom of the water flow. Geology, and never mind erosion, but look at the beautiful roundness of these pebbles and the proximity and closeness. There is a sort of intimacy between these small pebbles underwater. So fully dressed, so fully ornamented with gold. Now this is part of the tradition, not only of the South, but in people dress, but also by jewelry, by hinges, by swords, by rifles, and all of these elements go into the making of the folklore of Oman. And this picture has two persons, a young girl to the right and an older woman to the left. And they come from two different regions. And the difference between the costume and the jewelry on the little girl on the one hand and the older woman on the other hand is exactly of the same magnitude as the difference between the folklore of the South and of the interior. Ornamental character of their dressing, of their dancing, of their singing is one and the same. In the South, there is quite a bit of, shall we say, African influence or African cross-influence in culture, and consequently, we will have to recognize in beautiful Oman what we call Afro-Omanism. Because inasmuch as the Omanis had settled on the east coast of Africa, carried their customs with them there and influenced the Africans, they were also influenced by the Africans among whom they had lived, and they brought back to the motherland lots of their traditions, lots of their art, lots of their dancing, lots of their musical instruments, as we are going to see in a moment. And here again, the beauty of the visual can only be matched by the beauty of what you can hear. It is not the only spot where maritime life was flourishing. Suhar, Saham, Musandam, Salala, and Mirbat. All of these locations or localities boast for a great maritime history. In Sur now, where maritime folklore is very deeply rooted in every man and woman in Sur, and yet when you go to the seashore, sad ships, they are there sitting ducks. They are there sitting reminiscing over a long history of great activity, not only in commercial activities, but also in the world of art. On board every Omani ship was a complete life cycle of art. That life cycle starts with loading the ship, getting the ship ready to go, getting the ship on the way, dealing with every element in the ship, whether it is a sail, a rope, a mast, whether the sailors are working or resting or repairing things on ship because of the hazards of the sea. Their songs when they are faced with danger, their songs when they are out of danger, their happiness when they are on shore, they sing and dance, and in their singing and dancing there is plenty of thanking God for his protection, for his mercy, and pleading with God to be more merciful and more protective against more future and imminent dangers. And the Omani has lived beautifully in the dangers of the sea. And if we arrange those thousands and thousands of maritime songs that have been handed down from generation to generation, if we arrange them chronologically, we would be writing the history of Oman as told by those who made it. Ships sitting on the Sur shore, waiting for something or another to happen, hopefully anchor. A lonesome anchor that tells a long story of activity followed by momentary inactivity. Or the merchant ships of Oman have given way for modern ships to take over. Yet the art of making ships, if not in full size, has not died at all in making miniature ships of the finesse and of the beauty of this example here. Afro-Omanism is very prominent, to the point that even the musical instrument called the Nubian lyra, called Nuban in Sur, and sometimes called a tambura, is the only stringed instrument that is extant here in Oman after the extinction of the one-stringed violin called rababa or rebek that was known in the south. Now Oman knows only one stringed instrument, and this is this one here. And to the right is a feature that needs explaining. This young man has a girdle around his hips. It is made of a piece of cloth to which are sewn the dried hoofs of goats and sheep, and when he wiggles, it sounds like a maracas or a rattle. It is, shall we say, a human rattle, and this is how the Omanis have excelled in using what is at hand of their natural resources. Even the hoofs of sheep and goats, when dried, are sewn together, made this girdle. This is nothing new on the mainland of Oman, because this has prospered. And this is a tambourine. I want you to look at this picture carefully. This tambourine here tells a story. Actually, it symbolizes that the world is in the hands of man. That circle, the tambourine, the circular shape of the tambourine, is in the hands of man. And this picture has two areas, black and white, symbolizing night and day, symbolizing evil and goodness, symbolizing despair and hope. You can read in this picture whatever you want to read, because the beauty of the musical instrument itself imposes lots of thought when it is such for. This tambourine here has a great significance because it is an Islamic religious instrument. Oman is probably the only country that joined Islam without being conquered by the Muslims. They entered Islam by invitation from Prophet Muhammad. They believed in his message. They joined his new religion. He sent to them one of his Sahaba, of his followers, to teach them. And you may be interested to know that the Muslim army that conquered Egypt for Islam, or to Islam, was made of approximately 75% from Oman, because the commander of that army, Amr ibn al-As, was the one that was sent by Prophet Muhammad here to Oman to teach them Islam. So this tambourine is a leftover from early Islamic times, and it still survives. And when we view the videotape I have prepared for you, you will see the influence of Islam on the traditional music or on the folklore of Oman, because it has left quite a strong thumbprint on the visage of Omani folklore, nothing new. And again, the Omani utilizing whatever is at hand of the natural resources of this country, has used 3 stumps like this to make drums. Just cut a stump, cut here again using the sun as a natural resource to dry the wood, and when the wood is good and dry for good resonance, the Omani starts making his drum of a wooden log after the pulp had been eaten away. But how does the Omani get rid of that pulp? Mechanically? No. He only makes a small pit in the pulp on one end, burns some wood, or if coal is available, burns some coal, puts it in that pit, and the fire, the heat, will take care of the rest. And here we have an excavated cylinder. Pellet is stretched. Where does he get the skin? Again, from a natural resource. Animals. The Omani always had his camels, his cows, his sheep, and his goats. And as a matter of generosity, whenever they had a guest, they would kill one of those on his honor, or just for their own daily use, or on religious occasions like the Bayram feast or the Hajj feast, they eat the meat. But what do they do with the skins? They transform them into drum skins. Fully, a tree, a part of a tree, a wooden log that has been carved inside with the two sides or the two ends covered with skin. And note that small stick in the hand of the drummer. Again, the Omani is using natural resources. This is part of the middle stem of a palm leaf. If you take the fronds away on either side, you have the middle stem. You section it. You take different parts of it for different drums, because for each drum, one part of that central rod is suitable. Small, some are large. This drum here originated in the south of Oman and got propagated all over the Gulf. You find it in the United Arab Emirates, you find it in Kuwait, in Bahrain, you can even find it in Iraq, but it originated in the south of Oman, and they call it the mirwas. The mirwas is a derivative of the verb yar'as, which means to lead, because this is the leading drum. It's a small drum, it's a treble drum, its sound is very piercing, it's very dry, and actually it sets the pattern, the rhythmic pattern, in any group that uses it. An unusual sort of drum. It's a flat drum. It looks like a tambourine. It is not a tambourine because it has a membrane on both sides. And you see the membranes of both sides meet along the frame, and they are tied together very tightly with a rope. And you notice that the piece of the central part, the central stem of the palm leaf is the end part, the one that is slightly curved. Because if it is not slightly curved, it would very badly hurt the skin of the drum if it's beaten with it, you know, kind of pointed and kind of harsh. But with this small bend, you get the proper drums. They pet their drums, they spoil their drums. What do? They themselves put henna on their palms and on their feet as a matter of beautification. Men just put henna as a tint on their skin, but women excel in making very beautiful figures along their fingers and along their toes. What about the drum? Here they beautify the skin of the drum by painting it with henna, and the patterns are different. But again, this henna has another function. It improves the tonality of the drum because henna itself is astringent, and putting henna on the skin gives it more strength, more resonance than without the henna, and the patterns differ from one drum to the other, from one wilaya to the other. Drum skins, or tambourine that has absolutely nothing to do with religious music. This has jingles on the circumference, that is metal castanets, and it is used in what we call with the birth of a child, its circumcision, its adolescence, betrothal, and wedding, and of course a new birth. This sort of tambourine has, of course, one membrane, but here there is a new addition to the source, to the natural resource from which the skins are taken. we mentioned sheep and goats. But all along the coast, they can use fish skin. And some of the fish skin is so thin, it gives wonderful resonance to this small tambourine. And because it is small, they can use fish skins, because usually fish skins are not large in area. It's called the standing drum, al-Waqqafi. It is an imitation of an African drum that was brought probably 400 or 500 years back from the east coast of Africa. And it is used for certain genres of Afro-Omani music, and it is characterized by two features. Number one, its body is made either from a palm tree trunk or a coconut tree trunk, depending upon where you are. In the interior of Oman, they use palm trees. In the south, they use coconuts, and here again, natural resources. This drum has only one membrane that is at the top, and close to the bottom there is a circle, a protruding circle. It may be a small protrusion, it may be a large protrusion, and that is for the drummer to put his foot on in order to stabilize the drum. It is 125 years old. The ribs that make this drum were found strewn on the Sur coast, because this drum was the drum of a very famous merchant ship called As-Sab'a, which means the lion. And when the As-Sab'a, or the lion, was grounded, so to speak, whatever was in it or on it was left on the shore. Somebody retrieved these ribs, reconstructed it, because he was one of the original sailors of As-Sab'a, brought it to our attention, and now it is one of the acquisitions of the Oman Center for Traditional Music. The only new part in it is the skin, and it is an ox skin. And when you use the skins of oxen, one has two options: either use it with the hair on or without the hair on. This one has the hair on. Notice that this drum has certain markings. These markings were traced to some African tribe, and the genealogy of this drum was traced over 200 years. This sort of drum, as you see, is one membrane, again used in Afro-Omani song and dance, and it is the performer uses two short, thick sticks, each called mixera, which means the splinter. But again, you notice that the end of this mixera is bent. It is very difficult to tell where the cymbals originated. Probably they have been, shall we say, invented over and over and over in different places at different times. They may have been imported from somewhere, we don't know. And yet there are certain genres of folklore in Oman. For instance, the sword dance in the interior, known as Al-Ayyala, the same dance that is performed in the United Arab Emirates as an extension of Omani art, and its counterpart, known as Al-Arda in Al-Bahrain and in Saudi Arabia. They use this cymbal in order to impart a metallic, shall we say, taste to the left. Has in front of him a small metal tray turned over. The Omanis use anything that is at hand to make music out of, whether it is an old oil can or a turned over metal tray, and it's very interesting to know that this metal instrument is the leader in setting the rhythm, and everybody else follows and embellishes. Of the elements of natural resources here, and this is a conch, a gastropod. All along the coast of Oman, you find these. I have been able to identify 32 different species of conches as listed in Dr. Bosch's book, The Seashells of Oman, and these have all been transformed into horns. How? You simply cut off the end, the apex of the gastropod. You expose the middle tube, which we call the columella. You put your two lips on this opening, just like a trumpet player or a trombone player or a French horn player puts his lips, what we call an embouchure, that is the placement of the lips on that opening, and blow, and you get Neptune's horn. Neptune's horn was either a gastropod like this or a nautiloid, which is a relative coiled shell, and the sound is haunting. You can produce long blows or very short piercing blows depending upon what sort of dance or song you perform. An animal horn. On the side that is close to the lips of the blower, there is an opening, and he blows in it exactly like he blows into a trumpet, and it sounds. You're going to hear this instrument participating with the London Symphony Orchestra in performing certain phases of the music of Oman. It's compatible with the orchestra instruments because actually the French horn originated as a simple horn in times past. Although the French horn has evolved and this has not, and yet they blend with each other very beautifully. The Omani uses every sort of animal horn that he can blow into, and blowing a horn that's probably as large as he is, or even larger. You notice that this is a different type of horn. We'll get the first one back, solar horn, or the oryx, the African oryx, but there is plenty of water, with a lagoon or a lake, or on the sides of an active fallage. Bamboo grows. Cut two pieces, tie them together just like so with threads, burn the holes in. These holes are burned in. These perforations are not made mechanically but by the use of fire. They are burned in and ornamented with a tassel, and you have what we call al-mugran or al-magroon, which means the double reed. A very simple name, a descriptive name that tells what the instrument is. Now, when the player blows, he blows in the two pipes together. They produce the same sound because the measurements are the same, and he uses not the tips of his finger, but the length of his finger across the two holes in order to stop the two holes and produce sound. Actually, it is a double clarinet, the native oboe. It's a double reed. It is known in Oman, or it became known in Oman, from two independent tributaries. From Asia, with the Asia-Omani arts, and from Africa. The Baluch use it, the Afro-Omanis use it, and everybody uses it, provided that the genre of song and dance in which it's used necessitates its participation, and they are definite, known, and there is no transgression. You are going to hear this instrument played. The Omanis use its Persian name, its Farsi name. They call it surnai, which simply means musical pipe. Performed in this videotape has been taken the symphonic suite Omaniya on this surnai. And Omanis sing systematically. They do sing systematically, and this is part of the beauty of the folklore of Oman. They sing for their camels, and camel songs tell lots of the history of the Bedouins or the Bedou of Oman, their conquests, their triumphs, their defeats, their intermediation, their sorrows, their hopes, their pining and longing for the beloved on long trips. And for every moment of the Bedouin's life, he sings, but he always sings to his camel. Why? As a sort of shyness. If he is singing about his sweetheart, he cannot address another man. He addresses the camel. The camel listens, and believe me, the camel enjoys, and the camel does not divulge the secret for his horse. Why? They used to horse race, and in order to enliven their horses before the race, to activate them, they have fantastically rhythmic and encouraging songs to which the horses respond, and they become very active, dependent upon the poetic meter of the words sung and the tonality from which it is sung. They used to pull a rope in the older times before the Renaissance of Oman in order to pull water up from wells or from a fallage. But now they irrigate with pumps. But would they forget the water wheel which they are pulling with this rope? No. They converted a work song into an entertainment and a competition. They compete. What do they compete about? Their water wheel. Which water wheel has the louder voice and the more undulating tonal wheeze? It sounds like this. Yes, it does sound like so. And the more undulations they put in it, the more pride they have in the water wheel. And they have referees. How do they judge? They place the referees at different distances. And the referee that listens, the farthest referee that can hear the sound of the water wheel can tell which one reaches and which one does not. And there are no prizes, but it's just a matter of personal pride. Just like when oxen compete, the stronger ox may draw a larger price if it's sold, but its owner usually does not sell it. He prides himself in owning a wedding. Never mind the music, because you cannot feel it, but I wanted to see the integration of the different arts. Look at the roof and look at the walls. On the walls there is an exhibition of Omani costumes, and on the roof there is also an exhibition of Omani tapestry. If you put music on top of this, you can see how beautiful the music is going to be in its own milieu, because it is part of it. you cannot divorce the different arts one from the other. What affects one affects all, and although we cannot hear the music that was being sung in this picture, if you really close your eyes and try to see with your ears, you can hear that music here in this picture as part of the beauty of the visual, which reflects what the Omani الكامل الوافي in الشرقية. And here is what they call an Arab's wedding, in distinction from a Baluchi wedding or from an Afro-Omani wedding. Here, the men in the back have just finished their sword dance, the so-called Ar-Razha, in which they express in every possible way the feeling of gallantry and of chivalry. Sword dance. Then they give way to the women to sing and dance. After the men make their show, the women follow, and the two integrate in celebrating this wedding, a moment of great joy and of great beauty. A woman's dress. It is put on a hanger, cross-shaped hanger, and it is ornamented with all the ornaments that a woman usually wears or uses, including her small mirror. What's the occasion? The circumcision of a young boy. And what's this dress doing here? When the child is circumcised, the nearest of kin carries the child and walks at the head of this jubilant procession with this dress here hanging on top of the boy's head, with the hem of the dress draped over the boy's forehead as a symbol of maternal care and maternal protection and maternal love for the child at a moment of great pain. In the circumcised procession, there is usually not just one, more than one of these dresses, sometimes red. You see at the edge, at the lower edge of the picture, another dress in green. So here, lots of symbolism envelopes the folklore of Oman, especially that folklore that is connected with an old custom. Was and still is a major profession among the Omanis, and for fishing there is a long list of associated arts, mostly singing, using this animal horn musical instrument in order to enliven the singing and the action of the people on board the ship. But best of all, this picture shows the spirit of cooperation among the Omanis. See the younger boys running toward the ship to help with getting down the nets from the ship after the fishing is done and after the fish is taken out of the ship. Nets are very important. They need lots of care. People who have been out in the open sea fishing are bad, tired, but the nets have to come down. Accompanied with beautiful singing, everybody around lends a hand to pull down these nets, spread them, have them not only dry but ready for repair. And this is again one of the beauties of national life in Oman, that is the sense of cooperation among the people who live in a community and are tied up together, not only with the love of the profession they help each other with, but with the love of their own country. Cooperation, again, is very characteristic when they are working on the palm trees. Nobody collects his own dates by himself. They team up. They go to this man's house today, or to this man's trees, or they call it bustan, or mal, which means money, today. Another person tomorrow, a third person the day after, until everybody is finished. The very same thing with harvesting any sort of crop. This is why, in the folklore of Oman, group singing is a major feature. You see, if you look at the art itself abstractedly, you will not be able to explain why they sing such group songs and not individual songs, because of the cooperative nature of the Omani or the Omanis together when they perform their daily chores. Nobody walks alone. They are all together. This was a revelation when I found this all-girls choir singing in the most beautiful voice without any, shall we say, schooling in singing. And yet, if you watch the lip form or the form of the lips of these individual girls, you will see, or at least you can imagine, how correct, how healthy the sound comes out of their lungs or out of their larynxes. And here is a very interesting feature. At the very end, there is a child on his mother's arm, and on the edge that doesn't show from this projector, there was another child. It's very important to note that there is a continuity among the generations of the Omanis for the perpetuation of the folklore as an oral tradition. Until very recently, before the Oman Center for Traditional Music was created, and before the collecting and documentation of the folklore of Oman, it was handed down from one generation to the next orally, and heaven only knows what might happen to it 20 years from now. But still, hopefully, people of this sort will keep carrying their children when they perform on occasions, so that children can be trained, so that children would learn, so that children would carry along the tradition of the song and dance of Oman, in spite of the fact that it is now in safe hands, being on videotape, on sound tape, in still photographs, in slides, and in every possible way that would keep it from deteriorating or getting lost. We go into the Ministry of Information and the Oman Center for Traditional Music is introducing into the curriculum of public schools information about the folklore of Oman in every book of every subject, with the exception of religious subjects, because this is something we cannot introduce folklore into. Folklore is being introduced to the younger generation. Hopefully that some of them will be interested in it, either from the scientific point of view or from the artistic point of view, with the understanding that it has been already collected and documented, and it's going to be handy to anybody who would be interested among the population of Oman to carry this folklore into the idiom of today. The folklore of Oman shall live beautifully, but it will not live as it was handed down from years past. It is going to assume, and it will have to assume, the dialect of today in order to live for good. This is what happened in the folklore of many other countries, especially in Europe. Dvorak wrote the Slavonic dances, immortalizing Slavonic dances. Brahms wrote the Hungarian dances. De Fire wrote music from the Spanish folklore. great Russian five, Mussorgsky, Borodin, Glinka, Tchaikovsky, used folklore themes in their compositions. This is what the future holds for the music of Oman, for the folklore of Oman. In order to live, it will have to live in the dialect of today. This is not just theoretical talk. I'm going to show you some videotape recordings here. I'm going to show you first one of the most profound genres of folklore in Oman, and that is the poetry of self-praise. Self-praise? Yes. It's an Arabic tradition. Arabic poets always praise themselves, boast with what they are, praise their folks, their sheikh, their wali, their sultan, their country, their heritage. They find no shame in that. On the contrary, they find great pride. And poets compete in self-praise. Who praises himself better? Truthfully, not untruthfully. In the interior of Oman, in Bahla, a leader praises himself, his people, his country, His Majesty the Sultan, using very strong shouts and using the word Sood. Sood is a contraction of the Arabic word Usud, means lions. He is describing as a lion everybody he mentions in this oration. After you see this shouts of praise, as I call it, they call it ta'ayuta, you will see after how this has been transformed into symphonic music. Khalfan, let's first have the ta'ayuta, and we stop at it. There's going to be a little gap in between each couple of minutes. Yes? Shaka? Right. Any poem? But this is not the way I wrote the music. When you listen to this piece of music, you will see the very same elements as these shouts are made of, but naturally in a different, shall we say, arrangement. But you will see exactly what you've heard here, but not in the very same sequence, just like so. but I left it as an example of how much influence the African element that was brought by the Omanis onto the mainland, how much influence there is in the folklore of Oman, because this is built on the so-called the pentatonic scale characteristic of African music. There were only 5 notes of the scale used in building this passage, and I thought of leaving it as it is, just as a reminder that inasmuch as there is an indigenous Omanism, there is Afro-Omanism, and there is also Asia-Omanism, and this very, very fertile and virile land was strong enough to blend all of them together into a new alloy, which we call the modern Omani, without any distinction between any one of these 3 tributaries, except in folklore. The next cut is going to be part of a religious celebration. Muslims always utter a certain phrase whenever the name of Prophet Muhammad is mentioned. Either individually or in unison as a group, they say, Sallallahu alayhi. Sallallahu alayhi means, may God praise him by prayer. Sallallahu alayhi. This small utterance, pam, param, pam, pa, has become the origin of the first part of the symphonic suite Omani. And the selection was intentional. That is, to emphasize the Islamic character of this nation that joined Islam willfully and not perforce. This is the Sallallahu Alayhi part. In between the utterances, either the leader or the group reiterate a rather melodic passage, which again has been used in the structure of this symphonic suite Omani. Here is an example of 1 minute, so I wouldn't, shall we say, annoy some who may not follow it very well, just to show you how the Muslims say Sallallahu Alaihi on the one hand, and chant this melodic piece on the other hand. Abura here in Al-Batin area. Here at the beginning of the symphonic suite Omani. Following this is another example which constitutes the second part of this suite. It's a theme that's played by a piper on a double reed, the oboe kind that we call the surnai, and it is a responsorial sort of music. The piper plays the tune, and the choir sings a text to the same music. The text is very interesting. Originally, it went as follows. If you give me one date from the homeland of Oman, I can give you all of Zanzibar. I have no use for Zanzibar if you give me just one date of the homeland. It's a very poetic expression of the endearment that the Omani has always carried for the homeland of Oman. No matter how far he goes, and no matter how prosperous he becomes over there on the east coast of Africa, he likes to come back to the motherland just for one measly date. This is the way this tune sounds, and I wish that you would memorize it, because you will see it exposed by Symphonic Suite Omaniya. The first part of it is based upon Sallallahu Alayhi, the first cut of religious genre. The second is based upon this same tune that was played by the Surnai. And the third is based upon a theme from the national anthem of Oman. The theme that spells God save His Majesty. The Symphonic Suite Omaniya has 4 Omani musicians participating with the London Symphony Orchestra. They play 4 percussion instruments at the beginning of the second part, that is the Surnai or the double reed theme. One plays the barrel sitting drum, 2 play the small and the large hanging drums, and the 4th plays on an empty oil can. That empty oil can has ancient history. It's a Sahara oil can, by the way, and you will see it there on the screen with 2 sticks playing on it. And then at the end of this theme, and before the theme from the national anthem, one of them is going to blow the cow horn. Here is the Symphonic Suite Omaniya, played by the London Symphony Orchestra. That's part of the Bustan Palace concert. Second point, why? have for you. Those of you who would be interested, I have a sound cassette of the Oman Symphonic Music Concert for each one of you who would like to have it. It's up to you. I'm not forcing it from anybody.
Required him to be there as of yesterday. He said never, after committing himself to the Historical Association, he will not go to London until he gave his presentation tonight. And we're truly thankful for that. And he's leaving from here straight to the airport to catch his plane to go to London for his other forcing cultural commitments. Thank you very much.